All in Sports Network. We love sports. All in Sports Network.
It is Thursday, August 29th, and it is All in Horns right here, brought to you by Rogue Media. I'm Tanner Carlson along with Jake, and again, Twitter handles down there. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, put the little alert sign on there, and get caught up on all your daily Longhorn fixes right here. And we've got a lot to discuss today, Jake. We're going to dive in a little bit more on the defensive side of the ball. We talked in yesterday's show primarily on the offense. We barely touched on the defense, but we're going to continue that discussion with the defense here to start the show off. We got a little bit of volleyball action going on. The number one Texas Longhorns have a big matchup to start their season off. And then it is prediction day here as we go into Colorado State on Saturday. We are going to not only predict the Texas Longhorns schedule, but we're also going to predict the entire SEC week one, not the entire SEC season, but just week one of the SEC kickoff. And just give our takes on kind of what we think about some of the teams in the conference. I think it's going to be a fun episode today. I hope everybody else enjoys it as much as Jake and I. And let's go ahead and get started. And as I before mentioned, a big episode, or a big showdown with the number one Texas team in volleyball taking on number 3 Wisconsin September 1st. Jake, we actually thoroughly enjoy watching volleyball. I mean, I remember us being in college and we were in the student section rooting them on, and I've actually had to call some play-by-play games for volleyball games. I thoroughly enjoy the sport. It's a lot of fun. This girls team is going to be so much fun, man. They're going to be must-watch TV.
Yeah, I mean, I watched the majority of their tournament games last year as they went on to win the national title, and volleyball is an electric sport to watch. I mean, it is just a lot of fun, a lot of energy, and those girls are freakishly athletic. And Texas volleyball starting the year number 1 in the nation, looking to kind of notch one of those first SEC championships for the Longhorns athletic department. So they're going to be a team that we kind of keep you guys updated on how they're doing, what the record is, how they're doing in the SEC standings, and just try to give them a shout out because they truly deserve it as the defending national champions and the number 1 team in the nation to start the year.
Well, then I think this is a great opportunity to kind of let everybody know this is All in Horns, not All in Texas football. This is All in Horns. We are going to be discussing and covering all things Texas sports throughout the entire sports season. This is an every single day, 365 days a year, but whatever the math is where you don't count the 2 weekend days. But we're going to be going into basketball season when Coach Smart's not Coach Smart, Coach Rodney Terry, and what his team is doing in the recruiting area, and then what their schedule is going to look like in the SEC come basketball season. Coach Schlossnagel, the big hire for Texas, and baseball's the turnaround for baseball. We're going to get into all that and how exciting the SEC is going to look like with Texas and OU joining in softball. I think that is going to be maybe an underrated storyline as well. So again, this is All in Horns. There's a reason why we're talking all things sports, not just Texas football, but it is Texas football season, and that's the big highlight today. So let's go ahead, dive into some of the defense, Jake. We talked a little bit about the defensive line and kind of what we were excited to see yesterday's episode. Here are some notable players. Anthony Hill, sophomore, true sophomore. I think his coming out party was against Alabama last year. I think that's when everyone kind of knew, okay, this guy's the real deal. He's a 5-star linebacker who came in, flipped from A&M, or was leaning towards A&M. Texas,
he's a flip.
Yeah, and Texas was able to kind of sweep him away, if you will. And I think the news that Texas was going to the SEC had a fairly big part in his decision, and also who would rather play for Texas or Texas A&M. Trey Moore, the transfer from UTSA, we talked to him, mentioned him a little bit, Jake. I think his draft stock could skyrocket this season, going from UTSA to playing on the big stage at Texas. Malik Muhammad, a sophomore, that recruiting class with Anthony Hill, Malik Muhammad, and Derek Williams, all true sophomores that are playing valuable starting minutes for this team now in their second year. And then you got some transfers like Trey Moore, Andrew Makumba, and then some big-time recruits like Colin Simmons, who was the #1 defensive edge rusher in the entire country that Texas was able to get instead of LSU, which goes to show the kind of what you were talking about in yesterday's episode with there could be a little bit of a rivalry brewing between Texas and LSU. That's a possibility just mostly because of recruiting. But those are just some notable players. Jake, you can kind of go through the depth and kind of what competitions might, you see in spring camp that have jumped out to you or any rumors of some of those players.
Yeah, we touched on this on Tuesday's episode, I believe, but Jalen Gilbo taking over the starting position at star, moving Barron over to corner. That's going to be really interesting to watch, see if that sticks or if Gilbo isn't able to perform on game day, if Barron ends up going back to that star. I'm going to be really interested to see how that kind of situation sorts out. And then just seeing the linebacker depth behind Anthony Hill. I think it's going to be both exciting and a position to watch. You're going to see Leona Lafau get some of his first important minutes this year. He's a guy they're high on and expect to be good. And also watch out. Of course, we got David Bendez there as well, but also watch out for a true freshman, Ty Anthony Smith. He's a guy that Longhorn staff is very high on. They expect him to play some this year, get in some important positions, maybe a little less against the Michigans, the Georgias, but he's a guy who I think is going to get playing time this year. He's a guy they're expecting to be a star player moving forward, the 4-star true freshman.
Yeah, Jake, I think this is a team that I'm not quite sure that we've seen the depth on a Texas defense like this in quite some time. I mean, maybe going back to the Mac Brown days. But yeah, I look at this roster and I just love guys like Byron Sorrell and I like an Ethan Burke. We talked about the edge depth in yesterday's episode, but even going to the defensive tackle spot, like you were mentioning, Vernon Broughton, I think, is going to play a huge role on this team alongside with Alfred Collins and Sevilla, I think are going to be the main rotating defensive guys. And I think Alfred Collins is primed to kind of have I don't know if as much of an impact or as skilled or like as impressive in terms of like NFL pro stock, but like a Byron Murphy who, yeah, he absolutely, had a great senior year. T'Vondre Sweat had a great senior year. Those guys had to develop to get there. They weren't that their entire career at Texas. And that goes to show what this coaching staff is doing and Coach K over there. I like to call him Coach K, but yeah, what he has done over his tenure since coming in with Sark.
Yeah, and I mean, go look at a picture of T'Vondre Sweat as a freshman.
Right.
It's a completely different human. And also, T'Vondre Sweat wasn't even a guy that was hyped up to be this top defensive tackle in the country going into last year. And I think a lot of people forget that. Byron Murphy was a little bit more of a known quantity, but I don't think people were expecting him to be a first-round pick going into the year. And that's what a lot of people forget when you're talking about, well, they lost these two great defensive tackles. Well, they were great because they broke out during that year. Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton very well, maybe not to the extent that they did, especially with a little bit harder of a schedule, but they are two guys that absolutely could have a breakout and I think bring a little bit more pass rush to the table, especially as a duo. Sweat was much more a run specialist. He would generate a little pressure here and there, but he was definitely not a pass rusher. I think we're just going to see a lot more interior pass rush this year.
Well, let's not forget he lined up at tight end and fullback as well. Those big boys both got touchdowns. We got to see Murphy and Sweat get in the end zone and a little Heisman pose there from the big man in that Big 12 championship game a season ago. But yeah, Jake, I think a guy even like an Ethan Burke, Ethan Burke stands out to me for whatever reason. I go back and I just keep playing the highlight reel of that Alabama game where he was just all over Jalen Milroe and just destroyed all the rhythm and the what Bama was trying to do with Milroe in that game. I think if he can have a couple of those games, but just stay on the field and be a little bit more consistent, he's going to be in one of those guys that we're talking about, the player development from this defensive staff and this defensive line staff. Yes, we don't have Bo Davis, but I think, I don't think there's really going to be a beat that's missed from Bo Davis to who is currently there now.
Yeah, no, I mean, all the reports of Kenny Baker, he has NFL experience. We're going to see what he's all about, but he's starting to hit the recruiting trail pretty well. And I'm excited to see what he can do with developing. I think it was Vernon Broughton. It might've been Alfred Collins who in an interview this week they were asked what Kenny Baker brings to the table versus Bo Davis. And they were saying that Kenny Baker's a little bit more technical, which would make sense with his NFL background, that he's going to be really stressing technique. And the reports from camp are that the run fits have improved dramatically from spring. And so I'm ready for Saturday to get here. I'm tired of talking about the hypotheticals and thinking about what this team is going to look like. I'm ready to see it start playing out in the field, even if it's going to be probably a very vanilla game plan in this week 1.
Yeah, I think we're all in the same boat. Let's talk a little bit about the secondary. I think Malik Muhammad, Jake, is an absolute stud. I mean, he was everything he was supposed to be coming into the season as a freshman. I think Gavin Holmes, you can also put in that same category of a guy who has developed into a type of player that he is. But I think Malik Muhammad, he's a future top 10 pick, if you ask me. I mean,
Yeah,
this dude,
he
he's
has
pro
that
ready.
potential. He
Yeah,
has
yeah.
that potential, absolutely.
He's got the size, he's got the length, he's got the technique, he's got the skill, he's got everything that you need in a pro style corner. And he's currently a true sophomore. This is going into his second season playing the cornerback position for the University of Texas. And there's guys like that just come once in a decade, and Texas is happy to have Malik Muhammad. Gavin Holmes on the other side, though, he's no slouch. I think he's somebody that is going to be targeted a lot this season. He might get a lot of targets because Muhammad is more of the shutdown. He's not really going to bait you into anything, but Gavin Holmes is going to have an opportunity to make the play on the ball.
Well, again, the interesting thing with the corner position now too this year is with Barron moving over to corner, where he's going to play a lot more corner this year than he ever has. Gavin Holmes might almost be your third corner. Yeah. And then you still have Javion Cole, the transfer from San Jose State, who they're liking a lot. It's going to be interesting to see how he fits in. They just have so much more depth within this secondary position this year compared to last year. A lot of people get caught up on that spring game where they were playing a lot of single safety, a lot of very base coverages. I think they wanted to show off the offense a little bit. I think we're going to see a secondary that is not only a lot more technically sound this year, but is going to generate a lot more turnovers this year, especially with the help of a better pass rush that we've already discussed.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge part of it, though, is Texas last year and in recent years hasn't necessarily had the pass rush to help these corners out. This year, you're going to have ball hawks back there that are going to be shut down guys with a better pass rush. Now, the run defense, that's maybe the biggest question mark, but I still don't necessarily think it's going to be a weakness necessarily. It might just be the weaker part of the defense. Is that fair to say?
We're going to see that a lot of fans got spoiled from last year where when a team handed it off, you expected 0 to -2 yards just about every time. I think people got really spoiled with that. There's going to be more 6-yard runs this year. They're going to give up a little bit more on the ground, but I don't think it's going to be a major issue within the team. I would argue that the thing to watch is still going to be the secondary because we got to see it play out on the field. And I think we discussed this last episode a little bit, but I want to see them be more aggressive with pressing the corners up. You have the guys to do it. Be aggressive with them from the coaching side of things.
And then let's just a quick mention on the Clemson transfer, Andrew Mukumba. He is going to be, I think, a wealth of knowledge. He's experienced. He's a senior. He's been in the college football realm. He's been playing at Death Valley for the last few years. This guy has been anywhere and everywhere playing at Clemson. He's seen some of the biggest games and biggest stadiums. He's not going to shy away from the spotlight of the University of Texas by any means. And I really think that he's going to be a great kind of veteran leader. We talk about how this team and in today's college football game, how difficult it is kind of to find veteran leadership because of the transfer portal and NIL and just players leaving early to go to the draft and all the things that it's difficult to create that culture. I think he's a culture guy. I think he's bought in, and I think he is somebody who these younger guys can look up to, at least just from a place standpoint. You may not be able to be like, hey, where's the cool hot spot in downtown Austin that I can hang out with? But he might be
is from Austin. He is
yeah.
from
So,
Austin.
so yeah, he's probably going to
I
be
believe he
much more
played high
familiar.
school football with Taff, if I
Oh,
recall
okay.
correctly. So they're kind of reunited, and
Gotcha.
Taff is another guy back there.
Yeah.
We haven't really talked about him. He flies under the radar, but he's a leader. He knows the defense, and
Right.
he's a guy that, despite coming in as a walk-on originally, he's a guy they're expecting to be big time this year, and was arguably the most consistent safety last year. You really have a solid two deep safety room with Makuba, Williams, Taff, and Jelani McDonald. And then you also have true freshman Xavier Filsame, who's a 5-star, and he's sitting in your third string right now. And he would probably start at a lot of places.
And I think you can move Makumba and you can move Derek Williams kind of closer to the line of scrimmage to help in the run game if need be. If you're going to try to commit to stopping the run, those guys can play up in the front seven and really help those linebackers and those big uglies up front.
Jelani McDonald too. He's got size and speed. I know you know that since you broadcast the Waco Connolly games, but he's a guy that I expect to see play quite a bit this year, and especially in week 1. I imagine he is going to get a lot of reps in that game to start getting his feet wet with college football, because he really didn't see the field too much.
No, he was he was a special teams guy from time to time, and he was a rotation special teams guy, but it takes a lot to learn. He didn't get to play a ton of just full-time safety at Conley because he was the starting quarterback as well. So he is finally able to fully immerse into one position and just learn it. And we know he's got the athletic ability and the talent to do that. So, hey, let's wrap up the depth chart talk and the defensive talk. I think this defensive team is going to be much improved. I actually think Texas might be leaning on their defense more so this year than they even did last year. But I do think the offense is going to be rolling too. It's going to be a very fun season. Prediction time. All right. Put on your Mastradamus, your psychic ability, Jake. What do you think the Texas schedule looks like? We talked about some trap games yesterday's episode. I don't necessarily want to go into too much of detail on that, but really expectations, where you think this team finishes up. What would be a disappointing season for the Texas Longhorns?
I think disappointing is when you start to get in that 9-win range. I think this is a 10-win football team that has potential to win 11, 12 games in the regular season. My ultimate prediction right now, I would say that they're going to go 10-2. With the losses are hard to predict. A Georgia, I'd probably say, and then it could be a Kentucky, it could be a Michigan, it could unfortunately, hopefully not be an A&M or OEU type loss, but I think 10-2 and being in the playoffs is ultimately where I see this football team at the end of the day, with the potential to do more than that. But just with all the turnover and there being a lot of different guys that are going to have to step up, I need to see it start playing out on the field before I say, oh, this team is winning the SEC their first year in the conference.
I was listening to an interview with Roy Williams, Texas Longhorn, great wide receiver, Roy Williams. And he said, Texas is BA. We're waiting on the CK. We need it back-to-back years. We need this success to continue. Texas is almost back. A lot of people, I think, are like you. They're on the edge of wanting to say it and mean it and believe it and it actually be true. I think it's a whole nother thing for it to actually be that. Now, it was last year a fluke. I don't think so. I think this team is going to be just as good, just as talented, just in the thick of things at the end of the season as they were last year. I said it as soon as that Washington game was over and we were going into the SEC season. I had never felt more optimistic about going into a regular season as I have been for this 2024 year. I think Texas is SEC title bound. That is my expectation. My expectation is year one getting to an SEC title game. You get to the title game, you play Georgia or whoever you're going to play against, more than likely Georgia, then you're in the playoffs. And I think getting to the playoff and then maybe possibly hopefully winning a playoff game, that's my expectation. I don't know you win a national championship. That's a whole other story. But I think getting to the 12-team playoff, I think Texas, that has to be the expectation. That has to be the goal this year. I mean, I think anything less than not being one of the top 12 teams, and I know it's not technically the top 12. I realize that's not how they do it, but not being a top SEC team to be having one of those probably 3 to 4 spots that the SEC is going to fill in the 12-team playoff would be disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the SEC is likely going to get 3 or 4 teams for sure
Right.
into this tournament, and so I think 10-2 puts them easily in the playoffs, probably around an 8 or 9 type seed, and that's ultimately what I think this team is. I think they are a top 10 team with the potential to do more. Now, there's a lot of luck in that too. We've already caught the injury bug at the running back position. You're going to have as much depth as we've talked about with this team. We have seen seasons get derailed by injuries, even if you have good depth. And so that's something that, you just kind of have to cross your fingers that they stay healthy throughout the season as well. But I even think with some injuries, this is still a 10-win football team.
Yeah, well, and you talk a little bit about the turnover rate, and yeah, there's turnover in college football now. I think people need to get used to that. Alabama just went through a whole overhaul. Now, are they still one of the most talented teams in the country? They're Bama. Absolutely, they're still one of the most talented teams in football, but they also had huge overhaul in talent and players and coaching staff. It's a whole new realm for that entire program right now. Are they still going to be maybe one of the top 12 teams, one of the top 4 SEC teams? I'm putting my money on it. So I think Texas is kind of in that same realm, except for Texas still has a returning coaching staff, a returning starting quarterback, and loads of talent coming with it.
Yeah, and the returning quarterback is one of the biggest things. We saw a big jump for Quinn. We didn't talk about Quinn too much last episode. We were talking about that off air. Is kind of weird just because he's been such the focal point of the discussion heading into every season. I think more what people are just waiting to see is, can he make the jump from really good quarterback to great quarterback in potential, Heisman type candidate type.
Right. Is he going to become a college football legend? I think is kind of that next step. Is he a really good college quarterback? Absolutely. Is he going to be a college football legend in the walks of a Colt McCoy or a Vince Young? That is yet to be seen. So let's go ahead and jump into our regular season predictions. Week 1 in the SEC, Jake. I've got the games scrolling down there. We actually have games tonight. We have Arkansas Pine Bluff taking on Arkansas at Arkansas, and Murray State taking on Mizzou.
I think it goes without saying, we both know who we're picking here: Arkansas and Missouri and routes. I mean,
but what do you think about Missouri this year?
It's all going to come down to how their defense is. They lost their defensive coordinator. They did have some turnover, on the defensive side of the football. Their offense should be one of the best offenses in college football. Luther Burden is the best receiver in college football, in my opinion. Brady Cook is a very capable college quarterback that likely could have a, ironically, Chase Daniel type NFL career where he's a backup for a very long time. I think Missouri's going to be, I would take the over in that game of 57.5, because I think Missouri might score over 57.5 on their own.
Missouri will score over 57 points on their own. I think you're absolutely right. And I think just for a little bit of tidbit in terms of making bets on over-unders for if you're betting Missouri this season, I would just hit the over every single week. Just place a bunch of futures on the over with Missouri. Teams like Ole Miss, they're going to put some points on the board. They're going to do it every single week. All right, going into Friday night's game, you got Temple taking on Oklahoma. Now, some news came out today, that yesterday, that running back coach DeMarco Murray, Dallas Cowboy legend, will be suspended one game for illegally contacting 17 recruits, and he will not be in attendance for this Temple game against the mighty Fighting Owls of Temple. How do you think this game is going to go? I'm obviously just going to say OU is going to win this thing, and I don't think that DeMarco Murray news is going to make any difference whether or not they play well or not. But maybe some possible future violations or repercussions coming from the OU board or the NCAA with that maybe in the future. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, Brent Venables going to do what he has done best so far at Oklahoma, and that is he's going to win this game by 80. Yeah. He loves to run it up. And hey, that's football, right? You go out there and you should dominate a team that you should dominate. That's something Texas should have done better last year at times. This game will be over by the end of the first quarter. I mean, OU is just going to train roll them. Temple is, I know they've been good here or there in the past. They are not a good football team this year.
Yeah, no, they don't have a Matt Rule this year to fall back on. They don't have anybody like that. So going into Saturday's games, we're just going to go in order of the games being played. And right from the kickoff, it's going to be an excellent matchup. It's going to be Clemson taking on Georgia. This is a neutral site field. Number 14 Clemson taking on number 1 Georgia. Jake, I'm going to go ahead and let you give your analysis on this game first.
Yeah. I'll just give my score prediction. 45-17 Georgia. I don't think this is going to be a competitive football game.
You think it's going to be more talk, no bite?
Do you know that Clemson is the only team in college football other than the Naval Academies that did not take a player from the transfer portal this year?
Yeah, I did see that. It's insane.
That is just unbelievable to me in this era of college football. And maybe Clemson will prove me wrong. They do have talent. I haven't been, I was actually very high on Klubnik as a recruit, but I have not seen it from him on the field in college. I expect this to be one of those games where Clemson's probably a little overranked to start the year and Georgia just comes out and absolutely steamrolls them.
I also hate the NFL neutral site games. Just let it be at Georgia. Just let it be at Clemson. Like, let's just get some college environments going on. We're not going to get that at the Georgia Dome. We're not going to get it at Allegiant Stadium in Vegas. We're not going to get any of those types of environments that we could be getting that we're kind of missing out on with playing at LSU, playing at USC, or playing at Georgia, whatever the game is. It's just kind of a bummer that it's played at a neutral sided field. Anyway, let's go ahead. Let's run through a couple of these quickly. And I also will give my prediction on that Clemson Georgia game. I will also take Georgia in that game. The line is 13.5. I think they cover by 2 scores. Virginia Tech at Vanderbilt. I'm actually going to take Virginia Tech in this one, Jake.
Yeah, Virginia Tech is an ascending program. Vanderbilt, I know they have a transfer. I'm blanking on the name, but they have a transfer quarterback that they're excited about. But I think Virginia Tech ends up winning that game by probably 2 or 3 scores.
I think this is probably going to be one of the better Vanderbilt teams that we've seen in recent history and maybe the last 10 years or so. But also they're going to be a bottom feeder of the SEC still. They're not quite there yet. Chattanooga at number 15, Tennessee. I think Tennessee steamrolls this one.
Yeah, this will be a 63-6 type game.
Let's go ahead, skip the Colorado State-Texas game. We're going to save all that conversation for tomorrow's episode. Number 19, Miami taking on Florida at the Swamp. I think the big thing there is at the Swamp.
Yeah, this is one of the toughest games to me to pick because Miami is probably more talented. But Florida is very tough to play at Florida. And I think Florida, because of their schedule being so ridiculously tough, people are kind of sleeping on them. I do think they're a talented team. I'm going to take Miami in a very close game. I'm going to say that Miami wins by a field goal.
I feel like Miami has these games almost every year. They almost have a non-conference schedule that every year they will have some sort of blockbuster type matchup. And this is it this year. I think the transfer from Washington State, Cam Ward, coming into Miami, I think he's going to fit seamlessly in that system. I think he's going to be a leader for that team. He's a veteran in the college football ranks. I don't think the Swamp is necessarily going to scare him. He's played at Oregon. He's played at USC. He's played at some of these nationally recognized programs and stadiums, these historic programs. I'm going to take Miami. From there, let's go ahead. Old Dominion at South Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not real high on South Carolina this year, but I do think they'll win this game. I do think it's going to be a little closer than what, say, the spread indicates, which is 21. Old Dominion's one of those teams that sometimes is competitive in these games early on. Give me South Carolina by 14.
All right, yeah, I'll take South Carolina. I think closer than the experts say, but also South Carolina to win that one. Eastern Kentucky at Mississippi State. I think the Cowbells out loud and proud. I think they take it, and I think they cover the spread of 25.5 as well.
Yeah, coach making his debut there. Coach Levy, the offense coordinator from Oklahoma last year. I think they roll in that game. His offense is designed to demolish teams like in Eastern Kentucky.
And Western Kentucky taking on Alabama in Tuscaloosa, a 32-point spread for Alabama. I think they win that one, and I think they cover the spread, and I'm going to take the over as well
I was
of
just about to
59.
say I'll have Alabama covering the over by themselves. This game,
Yeah.
this is Milroe. I'm going to be very interested to see how he fits with DeBoer. I think he could have a huge year this year with his deep ball.
Yeah, I think the system that he ran with Penix a season ago is going to translate very well for a guy like Jalen Milroe. Furman at Ole Miss.
Ole Miss by 100.
Yeah.
I think Ole Miss is a very, very good football team this year.
I would agree, and I'm a huge fan of Lane Kiffin. By the way, absolutely love him. I think it's love or hate with him. I think people can't stand him, and I think people absolutely love him. I'm on the absolute love side. I'm all for Coach Kiffin and the Ole Miss Rebels. I think they're actually going to be a very good team this year as well. A big game. This is a fun one. Notre Dame at Texas A&M, Jake. I think this one we actually have a little bit of a discussion on, and we are going to kind of have to wrap things up a little bit, but let's go ahead and get this one in.
Yeah. I think Texas A&M is going to win this football game. I don't like saying that, but Notre Dame has several underclassmen starting at the offensive line position in this game.
Was it two freshmen and three sophomore?
They might have had one junior or senior, but It was at least like a freshman and three sophomores, or two freshmen, two sophomores.
Gotcha.
And A&M's strength at their football team, their front seven is scary.
Yeah.
It is one of the best front sevens Texas will go against all year. And I think A&M is going to win. And I think Connor Weigman is if he can stay healthy, a very capable quarterback for Texas A&M, an NFL type level quarterback. I think A&M is going to win this game by 10.
I still think Notre Dame's going to win this one. I think they're going to squeak it out. I think they're actually going to be maybe considered an underdog. I know that the line isn't going to say that, but I think a lot of people.
It does actually.
Yeah.
A&M by 3.
A&M 3 is the line. I actually think Notre Dame. I think the sexy pick all week long. I think we're going to see it on College Game Day. I think the sexy pick is going to be as your underdog. Your upset of the week will be the number 20 team beating Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame comes out ready to play. I think they come out. I think they're going to win this game. I think they're going to play their style. And I think A&M's going to have a little bit of growing pains with a new coach. I'm not saying Coach Elko isn't the guy. I'm not saying that I don't believe in him as in turning that program into what they want it to be. I'm just saying there's going to be some growing pains. And Notre Dame as your first collegiate game as the head coach for the university or Texas A&M, that's a tough one. So we're split on that one, and I'm going to take Notre Dame. You're taking A&M. Alabama A&M at Auburn. I'll take Auburn by 1 million.
Yeah, I mean, I won't have that game on at any point. That's going to be if that game is remotely close, Auburn has some serious issues.
Yeah, I think that one's being played on USA Plus or something like that. I don't know. So that's a joke. I don't even think that's a streaming service. Southern Miss at Kentucky.
Yeah, this is a game where I initially looked at it, and I think a Southern Miss is one of those teams that wins 9 or 10 games sometimes, but based off the line, I don't know anything about Southern Miss this year, but based off the 28-point spread that it is, I'm going to say that Kentucky wins. But for the heck of it, I'm going to say Southern Miss covers.
All right, yeah, I'll take Kentucky, but I'll take Kentucky taking the over. I think they're going to score 50+, and Southern Miss might get a couple scores in there. And Sunday's matchup, Jake, this is a Sunday night game. It's going to be a very fun game. Number 23 USC taking on number 13 LSU. It is a neutral-sided game. That's going to be playing in Vegas. Again, a total missed opportunity by college football to have that in Death Valley with the just absolutely absurd LSU fans. Absolutely love those fans. I got family over there, so I'm a big Louisiana guy. But, I'm going to take LSU in this one. I don't know if Lincoln Riley has this defensive thing figured out. I think Ryan Kelly knows how to win football games. I think LSU is going to be consistently up to about a 10-win program as long as Ryan Kelly's the head coach there.
Yeah, I mean, Brian Kelly and his family are fitting in real well there. But no, I mean, I'm going to take LSU, but this is kind of a weird matchup. I really don't know what to expect from either team. LSU relied heavily on Jaden Daniels last year, and I don't think that they have a Jaden Daniels this year. And they're very loaded at the receiver position. They're very good at the skill positions. What's that defense going to look like? That is the big concern, I think, for LSU in this game. Is Lincoln Riley may not know how to play defense, but he knows how to play offense. And if LSU's defense is like last year, USC could win this one in a shootout. I think this is going to be a high scoring game. I love the over, even though it's 64.5. And
take it.
I think I'm going to go with LSU in a close one, but this is not one I feel confident on.
Yeah, I'm going to take LSU, and yeah, I think that's going to be a really fun game. I think there's going to be some really both teams losing, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, the top 2 picks in the draft last year, both having to kind of reinvent themselves on the offensive side of the ball at the quarterback position. Should be a fun storyline to follow. That's going to do it for us here on All In Horns. Happy Thursday. Jake, tomorrow it's review time, baby, and we're going to dive in deep into Colorado State and Texas right here on All In Horns. Tune in tomorrow, and you'll get a great show. Hook 'em.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.